Hey Print Hustlers, it's Luke from Printavo. I am back with another episode of the Weekly, and this week we're going to discuss contract printing. So, a funny thing that people new to the print game learn about is contract printing. It seems kind of funny, right? If you don't know what it is. If you've been around the block for a while, you know what it is, and you're just like, okay, whatever. But if you don't know, it's pretty simple. It's when a print shop prints for somebody else. Big contract shops are laser focused on efficiency. They are obsessing over seconds and how they can prune down any type of motion or waste. The volumes they deal with and the speed that they have to kind of keep up, it means they have to wring the rag dry over and over and over. But there's one really weird thing about contract printing. Sometimes there's no contract. It's just a verbal agreement and an invoice. What should contract shops do if they get a customer that demands a contract and they've never written one? What if you're new to this whole thing and you want to bulletproof your operation against customers doing nasty things? Well, you write and you sign a contract. You don't need to be a lawyer to do this. Now, disclaimer, look, yeah, let's be honest, I'm not a lawyer. If you're putting lives and money on the line, you need to talk to a lawyer about that contract. But this is a great start. So verify, don't just trust. If a lot's on the line, take it seriously. So what should be in a contract for contract printing? Similar to how you'd write terms and conditions, which I've talked about before, contracts should always over-communicate. If something seems really obvious to you, the odds are good that it's not obvious to your customer, even if they are another print shop. If it's left unwritten, it's a liability. Don't assume a customer, even an experienced customer, knows all the details. So at a minimum, here's what to include and why to include it. So you always want to include the names of your shop and the shop that you're working for. It seems obvious, but you should know if you're doing double contract work. You should know who the customer is. You should know why that print shop wants you to print for them and what's going on. You should always know who the end customer is. This solves a whole lot of issues like copyright problems, and it benefits your business and the shop you're working for. If it's a really high-end client, you can demand higher prices. If it's not, you understand the situation the print shop's in, and you understand why you're contract printing for them. Always define how payment's going to happen and when. I know this seems obvious, but lay this out in as much detail as possible. It's all about the money. Is it going to be credit card, ACH, something else? Nail the how and the when for payment, and make it really clear. Obviously, you need quantities, sizes, and other invoice information. This is what Printavo is super, super useful for in contract printing. Or you can develop your own spreadsheet that you just pass back and forth. Rates, fees, other financial info are really important to include. Like, do you charge for bagging and tagging? Maybe you charge for custom colors. Lay out all of the possible fees and charges and really make it clear. And also any banking info they might need. If they want to pay you and they don't have your routing number, well, what are they going to do? Email you and then wait half an hour? No. Give them that info up front. Who to contact? Okay, this seems obvious, but it's so important that you have contact info to share with the print shop upstream with you to the customer you're sending them to. Does that make sense? So if you're printing for a customer who's actually ordering from another print shop and they contact you, everything gets screwed up. So if you're printing for a client that you kind of estimate doesn't want them to know that they're doing contract printing, well, put their contact info there and make it that they're the point of contact. So just keep that in mind about how it looks to the customer, how it looks to the shop you're printing for, and basically who to contact if there's a problem. Spoilage rates and a policy around spoilage. Oh, wow, this is important. I know that there's a rule of thumb in the industry to expect 1% to 3% spoilage, but that doesn't mean that everybody understands what that means. And it's so crucial to state exactly what your expected spoilage rate is, and most importantly, how you deal with spoilage. You got to have a policy. So if you got to have a spoilage policy, you also have to have a refunds and returns policy. Here's a hint for refunds and returns in contract printing. Don't do them. If something goes really wrong, considering offering a credit, but don't do refunds and returns. It will just be a pain in your side. Dates for artwork. Oh, you can't print without artwork. This is such a pain in the butt. This is mission critical. Set a hard, firm deadline for when you need print-ready art. Dates for garments. Okay, this is hard because there are always shortages in garments right now, and I think it's just going to be that way for a long time. But if you have at least a date listed, you can try to hit it. And of course, you need the dates for the in-hand time. This is a really small and crucial piece of information that often gets dropped in contract printing, and I don't know why. Instead, what happens is a scenario where a print shop is printing for another print shop who's got an end client that's waiting for the goods. The print shop in the middle says, hey, we need these garments, this day. And actually they need them, to get to the customer maybe a few days later. But the shop upstream doesn't really understand that, and maybe doesn't understand that the deadline's really firm. So it's really important to communicate that the end customer needs the product at a certain time, and that's the deadline, not when the print shop in between gets the garments. So people miss this all the time. It's important. All right, so we've talked a little bit about what you need, but what's in like a really serious government level contract? Contract printing is really like a free-for-all. So one way to gauge what's really effective is to go to the most conservative and tightly wound people in the world, and that's the government. So I did some digging, and I found actually a really cool print contract between a government agency and a print business from Lee County, Florida. Now, this isn't necessarily for apparel, it's for paper supplies, business cards, all sorts of like printed collateral that a government needs. But it's really, really thorough, and it's worth taking some time to go through each section to understand it. You don't need to put together a contract this thorough for everyday use. In fact, like I said, most contract shops don't use contracts at all, but it's got excellent coverage. It'll probably make you think of something really powerful to add to your contract. You'll notice that it's absolutely loaded with legal jargon, and you can check it out for yourself at the link down below. But I'm going to read this, and I'm not going to read it letter for letter. I'm going to summarize it for you. So here are the sections you might want and what we learned from this contract. If you're not comfortable with writing this contract, seriously, consult a lawyer. It's probably best to do that when there's lots of money on the line. Don't bet the farm on this. So I'll run through each section and briefly summarize what's in it, and you can dive in on yourself and take a look if you want. The first section is products and services. This just lays out the scope of the services that the shop provides. It references a more detailed document in the appendix that includes a full index of the products that the shop offers. This is basically saying, hey, look, we have a menu of stuff that you can buy. Here's what we agree that you all want to buy from us. Here it is. And it's all listed out. Now, they don't list it out on this section. They just explain that it's in another section. Pretty cool idea. Terms and delivery. So this section's interesting. It explains when the contract goes into effect, how long it lasts, how to renegotiate or renew the contract, and really importantly, an exclusivity clause that says that this Florida county has to go to this specific shop for orders first. The next section is compensation and payment. So this vendor has a very clear fee schedule. They agree that there's no minimum order. The contract isn't an agreement to order anything. And it includes a pretty powerful termination clause that allows either party to terminate the contract. It also just lays out how and when to get paid. And of course, there's the method of payment section too. This contract just says the vendor is going to follow the county's rules for payment. And the contract says that basically the way this works is that the vendor is just going to send them a monthly invoice. The additional purchases section comes next, and this one's pretty interesting. It says that the government won't pay for any mistakes in ordering, and vice versa, without some kind of written agreement. So, in other words, they're not going to pony up more money in case they ordered too many of this or that, or too few of this or that. They're just kind of stuck with what they got. It's more of a cover-your-butt agreement between the print shop and the government. Vendor liability. Now this one, this is tough. The vendor holds the government harmless. So this protects the government, not the shop. Now, you can actually protect your shop with another section that's next. That's vendor insurance. The contract says that the vendor is fully responsible for insurance. It's the opposite of protecting the customer. It protects the shop, but it's just obligated in the contract. Then there's a vendor responsibility section. I really like this section. It's all about quality and quantity. There's no cheating allowed, right? Like someone in the government can't procure this contract for their own business. They'll comply with all the laws. They'll keep a record of all the transactions, and they'll generally just agree to be a good partner to the government. Ownership of products. Now, this one I want to call out as being so crucial, particularly if you're printing or making art that's high value. This is the section where you can decide if you own the art that you print or not. Contract shops almost never own the art that they print, let's be real. So don't try anything clever here. But shops do this. You can state that the shop you're printing for owns the products, owns the art, whatever. And interestingly, this releases you from some liability. So it's crucial to nail who owns what you're printing. Because the odds are good if you're a contract shop, you don't actually own it. You are getting the garments, you're putting the ink on, and you're sending it out. It's a service, but you don't actually own any of the products. Compliance with applicable laws. This is a really legal jargony section, but basically just they're going to agree to use Florida law to settle any disputes. Termination. Ooh, I like this one. This lays out that the shop needs 30 days to terminate the contract. In other words, they get a free month. It lays out some cancellation fees, and it says, hey, look, the vendor, we're not responsible for any losses that you incurred. And it says that the work ends on the termination date. So no free rides, no jobs scheduled in the future after the termination date. Once they terminate it, boom, it's over. That's it, the end. Dispute resolution. I like this one. If you have a disagreement with a customer, you want to be able to have a playbook and tell them, hey, look, this is how we laid out what we were doing. It's like the spoilage policy, right? It says really they'll try in good faith to settle a dispute. And then it explains that any dispute will happen in the Lee County courts and under Florida law. The vendor warranty. Now, this one's interesting. It really says that all products will be of, quote, the most suitable grade. And they have to meet the representations and quality assurances published by the manufacturers of the products. So it's kind of legal jargon for if the government thinks it's bad, the government can get a refund. And if the vendor thinks it's right, well, tough cookies. There's a miscellaneous section. It says this contract supersedes any other agreements, so you got to rely on this contract if anything goes on. It seems like that matters, right? Like no verbal agreements, nothing through email. If it's in the contract, that's what's going to happen. The contract also lays out that each section relates to each other. So, in other words, this is interesting. If one part of the contract isn't upheld, that doesn't null and void the rest of the contract. It's really legalese for cover your butt. Exhibits and attachments. If you own a print shop, this is the part of the contract you want to look at. I promise you it's going to be interesting to you. All the real data is in this section. It's all the policies for ordering, proofs, deliveries, invoicing, the technical specs that the county requires, prices, insurance details, and even a background screening. Like anything that has to be included gets really specific in this section, and it kind of reveals how this print shop operates. It's fascinating, and this document is really interesting. It's interesting that it was on the internet. It's interesting that it's still there, and really, we should all learn from it. Whew! Are you tired yet? Yeah, this kind of stuff is really why they pay lawyers the big bucks. Oh, I have a bonus for you. You can use Printavo to help with contract printing. One of the coolest features that came out of a quarterly Printavo hack day was Contractor Profiles. This is a feature that several shops requested. Basically, hey, can you make Printavo look like I'm somebody else? Well, Contractor Profiles let you do that. They change the company info on invoices, box labels, packing slips, work orders. It's a premium-only feature, but it allows you to white label your service and really take your contract printing to the next level. All right, that's what I got on contract printing. How do you write a contract for your contract printing? Am I wrong? I might be. I'm not a lawyer. And if you've got one, let's share it. Drop it in the comments. All right, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the weekly Printavo's newsletter video. I'm Luke, and we'll see you next week.